From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 10 o'clock news.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. This time last year, Montana's unemployment rate sat at a whopping 11.9%. 1 year later, it has dropped dramatically to just 3.8%, much lower than the national unemployment rate, which now stands at 6%. While many businesses were forced to close or lay off workers during the early months of the pandemic, some are now struggling to find them. For our latest rebound report, Q2's David J. headed out to one of the state's largest job fairs, the Billings Job Jamboree, to find out how businesses are dealing with the challenge. David?
We're here at the Montana Pavilion talking with the organizers of the Job Jamboree. It's a job seekers market. Some others are saying it's a little bit more challenging to find workers, but for all of them, they do say it is an opportunity to be here.
We feel like it's competitive, you know. I mean, the people that want to work for the big conglomerates are going to go to them first, you know, and the people that want to come to the small mom and pop places like myself, they're going to come to us. So we both get our equal shot.
It's a good exposure, get your name out there and let people know. It's good to be able to hand out your card to lots of people and get to know them. It also connects you with different resources across the community that are trying to help job seekers as well.
It's a great opportunity, even if you aren't hiring a tremendous amount. It's a great way to get your business information and awareness out about your company as well. So great branding opportunity.
Billings is a little easier to hire in, but definitely it's challenges in Helena, challenges in Bozeman for sure. Pretty successful in Great Falls.
As a small business owner here in our community, I also do that hiring, and some of those positions are really hard to find good qualified people that want to be involved in an organization.
Definitely less people out enjoying it, but it is good that it's back, and it's nice to get back into some normal routines, and we all get a little rusty after skipping a year with these sort of things.
For us now at this point, it's kind of filling in those loose gaps, and we're going to hopefully get that done. We're always looking for that next good candidate.
For some people, they're filling out the applications and actually getting interviews here at the Montana Pavilion. They may get a job today or may just be part of the interview process. In Billings, David J., MTN News.
Thanks, David. More than 100 businesses and government agencies came to the Jobs Jamboree. New tonight at 10, the controversial bill meant to encourage Northwestern Energy to acquire a bigger share of the COLSTRIP 4 power plant in southeast Montana has been killed by a House committee. After a brief debate late this afternoon, the House Energy, Technology and Federal Relations Committee voted 11-1 to kill Senate Bill 379. Supporters of the bill said it would help the state's largest electric utility acquire a bigger share of the coal-fired plant's power and thus prolong its existence. But opponents said that bill would end up costing Northwestern ratepayers millions of dollars when less expensive and cleaner energy is available. Most lawmakers on the House committee said today they could not support a bill to help a specific company or that takes away the power of state regulators to review utility rates. That bill had been approved by the Senate but is now likely dead in the House. A special Montana Legislative Committee has advanced the one remaining bill that would make major changes to the state's marijuana laws. MTN's Jonathan Ambarian takes a closer look at the proposal that they're putting forward.
The Montana Senate Select Committee on Marijuana Law wrapped up a week and a half of work on Wednesday, passing its plan for implementing recreational marijuana in this state.
For Montanans, we've done an incredible job. Making sure that the will of the voter has been heard, making sure that we have a workable product.
I'm glad that we worked as hard as we did and brought all the stakeholders to have a discussion with us, and I think we are doing right by them.
The committee narrowed down 3 large reform bills and several smaller ones to a single proposal, House Bill 701, sponsored by Republican Representative Mike Hopkins of Missoula. On Wednesday, they passed it 11-1 after adding significant amendments of their own. Most of the committee's work was rolled into what members called the Big Amendment. One of the major changes in the amendment was to counties' ability to block marijuana businesses. For counties where most voters rejected I-190, recreational businesses wouldn't be able to operate unless county voters held an election and voted to opt in. In counties where most voters supported 190, recreational sales would be allowed unless cities or counties voted to opt out. The big amendment also made several other changes to the bill, including allowing counties to ask voters for a local option marijuana tax, limiting home growing of recreational marijuana to 2 mature plants per person and 4 per household, and eventually redirecting some tax revenue back to conservation programs and veterans services, as I-190 initially called for. The bill as amended must now go through engrossing. It could be ready to be debated by the full Senate either Thursday or Friday. If the Senate approves, the House will have to decide whether to accept their version of the bill. In Helena, Jonathan Amberian, MTN News.
The committee also added one smaller amendment requiring the Montana Department of Revenue to destroy marijuana and marijuana-infused products that fail quality testing. Governor Greg Gianforte was in Billings today to sign a new bill into law and draw attention to an alternative way to ensure that your health care is insured. He did so by signing Senate Bill 101 at Flex Family Health, a medical clinic in the 3300 block of Grand Avenue. There are currently 8 of these direct patient care clinics across the state. Although the clinics have been operating for a couple of years in Montana, Gianforte says Senate Bill 101 now makes it state law that patients can enter into agreements with doctors and pay them directly for health care services. Patients usually pay a monthly fee to these clinics for 24/7 primary care. They do have to pay for extra services, but those services are often offered at a reduced cost. The concept cuts out the middleman, the insurance company, and Gianforte says it offers another option to receive affordable health care with a goal for better health care.
They don't limit the duration of patient visits. You come in, you talk with your provider until you get resolution. And there's no limit on how many visits you can do. You're paying a subscription, and it's basically like a buffet for all the medical care that you want.
There are currently about 700 subscribers at Flex Family Health. Owner and nurse practitioner Cole Whitmoyer says appointments usually run from 30 minutes to 2 hours, and Whitmoyer says these practices can handle 80 to 90% of all medical needs that people have. He does suggest that people have insurance for catastrophic care. Well, Tuesday's murder conviction of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin is spurring fresh momentum on Capitol Hill to address police reform. While Republicans and Democrats agree on issues like more body cameras, there are still some sticking points. Natalie Brand has more.
From the family of George Floyd,
we're going to fight for everybody,
to the President of the United States.
We can't stop here.
Recognition that Tuesday's guilty verdict for former police officer Derek Chauvin is just step one.
We have to focus on transforming policing in the United States.
California Congresswoman Karen Bass is among those leading efforts on federal police reform legislation.
The bill is passed.
Just last month, the House passed the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. It would ban chokeholds and some no-knock warrants and prohibit racial and religious profiling. But overhauling qualified immunity protections for police, which would make it easier to hold officers accountable in court, has been a non-starter for Senate Republicans. Republican Senator Tim Scott says he's working on an alternative proposal on qualified immunity that would put more burden on police departments instead of individual officers.
I'm sure he's updated a few things based on more current events, but expect to see a really good bill coming out soon.
At least 319 people in the U.S. have been killed by police so far this year, according to mappingpoliceviolence.org. The group says in recent years, the vast majority did not result in charges against the officer.
I think it's time for us to have a commission to take a deep dive, deep look, evidence-based approach to how will we imagine policing for the next couple of hundred years.
Miami Police Chief Art Acevedo is calling on President Biden to launch a national oversight commission that he promised during the campaign. The White House says it will focus on legislation instead. Natalie Brand, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer said today he expects the Senate to amend the House bill, but he's hopeful that progress on passing something out of Congress could come in the next few months. Well, there's a new police dog on the streets of Laurel who helps sniff out narcotics and helps find missing people. A Belgian Malinois named Colt was welcomed to the Laurel Police Force last week. Q2's Mitch Legge introduces us.
The Laurel Police Department welcomed its newest member to the force last week. His name, K-9 Officer Colt. He's a 22-month-old Belgian Malinois, trained to sniff out narcotic drugs like cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine. He's also trained to track down missing people. Laurel Officer Jackson Booth is Colt's handler. He spearheaded the idea to bring back the Laurel PD K-9 unit.
My goal was to get it done in a year, and my goal was to go to the last K-9 class that I went to in March of 2021. By any means that I believe that goal was going to happen, but I was told to dream big and shoot for the stars, and that's what I did.
The Laurel Police Department last had a K-9 unit in 1997, according to Booth. Chief Stan Langvey said the unit just wasn't kept up after the previous dog passed away. Colt is expected to serve for the next 8 to 9 years. Colt started his life in Europe in the Netherlands, and all of his commands are spoken in Dutch.
For him to sit is going to be Sita. For him to find, when we're training everything, for him to find Gifty is what is his command, to look for narcotics or look for his Gifty. The list goes on and on.
The owner of a Pennsylvania working dog importer and training company, Shallow Creek Kennels, picked Colt up from Europe and gave him 6 weeks worth of training to become a police dog. Booth just got back from 4 weeks of training in Pennsylvania, learning how to work with Colt. Being a K-9 officer is a 24/7, 365 on-call job. Officer Booth and Colt could get called out at any hours of the night to assist their fellow officers.
Having me and Colt we're told that it's there 24/7, that can be called at any time to come help and be an asset to help someone's family that might be in need.
With that dog, it gives us that opportunity to establish that probable cause, to get a warrant and pursue these drug cases, whereas before you might have a suspicion but you have no probable cause to detain them and continue investigation further.
The cost for Colt, the pair's new but used police car, and their training totaled about $50,000. Langvey said it wouldn't have been possible without donations from community members and businesses. 100% of the cost, other than a bit of travel expenses, was paid for by donations. Langvey said if the donations start to slip to Laurel's K-9 unit, the cost falls back to the department. But he said the department is fully committed to keeping the K-9 unit around for a long time. In Laurel, Mitch Legge, MTN News.
Thank you, Mitch. And details aren't final yet, but within the first couple of weeks of May, Chief Langvey says there's a plan to hold a community meet and greet for Colt at Riverside Park there in Laurel. Still ahead on the MTN 10 o'clock news on Q2, preserving a century-old tradition. In tonight's Montana Ag Report, we look at the importance and history of Montana livestock brands. Then a little later in sports, the Battling Bears men's soccer team headed back to nationals, but this year they have an even bigger goal in mind.